We got to start this show with the offensive display, the vulgar display of power at Ford Field, and the Washington Commanders, a 9.5-point underdog, blow up the scoreboard and shock the Detroit Lions 45-31 to advance to the NFC Championship game. They will travel to play either the Rams or the Eagles next weekend. Obviously, we'll find out where they're going on Sunday. But let's do this. And I say shock not because of the result. We said it in the preview episode. You shouldn't be surprised if Washington keeps this game a lot closer than the spread indicates. I will admit, I did not have the guts to pick the Washington Commanders. But what's shocking is not that they won. They wound up beating Detroit's ass. I mean, consider this. Commanders scored their final points of this game to get to 45. Over-under for this game was 55.5, by the way. We blew past that halfway through the game. But the Commanders went up 45-28 with half of the fourth quarter still to play. Think about that. For starters, the Commanders, the cardiac Commanders, the most thrilling team in football for most of this season. This was the first time since their bye week that they won a game by more than one possession. The last 6 weeks have been walk-off and heart-stopping finish after heart-stopping finish. Every single week with this. So go figure that their most comfortable win in 6 weeks comes at Ford Field against the 15-2 Lions. The Lions who had a point differential of plus 222. The Lions who won, it felt like half their games by 3, if not 4 possessions this season, who scored 50 points on multiple occasions. That was the team that the Commanders maybe didn't decide to blow out, but I'm sorry. If there was a game that I thought the Commanders would need to scrape and claw to win, it was probably this one. And with a lot of guys, with a lot of respect to a lot of guys that helped make it happen, and we will talk about that, because yes, it was a total team effort, and I want to get into some really fun moments for a lot of guys on this team as Dan Quinn and his guys make it back to the NFC title game for the first time since 91. With a lot of respect to them, it's pretty obvious that the difference was this sensational rookie quarterback. I run out of ways to describe Jayden Daniels, but when you are the best player on the field in a game against the best team in the NFL all season long, it's pretty incredible. And the theme of the night was that both of these defenses were overmatched. Can you tell? 45-28. Lions ran the ball at will. Commanders were averaging, what was it? I mean, Brian Robinson Jr. averaging 5 yards a pop, moving the ball up and down the field. But the difference was this. One guy in this game was masterful. You see it on the screen there. 350 total yards, 299 throwing, 51 rushing, 2 touchdowns, picked up 2 fourth downs with his arm, picked up another one with his legs. The other quarterback lost a crucial fumble in the red zone in the early going, followed that up with 3 interceptions, a back-breaking pick 6 early on, not to mention an end zone interception at the end of the first half. And obviously that leads to the biggest mind bender, the brain teaser of it all. The guy with the 4 turnovers, 9th-year veteran, Jared Goff. The guy who delivered in seemingly every big moment, who has never looked flustered by the bright lights of the NFL at one point going all the way back to September. It's the rookie. It's Jayden Daniels, who's still in his first NFL playoffs. The 4th rookie ever to win multiple playoff games dating back to the 50s. And combined with last week's win in Tampa, I love this one because these are not obviously overmatched opponents that Jayden Daniels is beating. Dating back to last week's win in Tampa, Jayden Daniels, the first rookie since at least 1950, 70 years, to beat 2 top 5 offenses in the playoffs. The Buccaneers and the Lions scored points better than all of them. Jayden Daniels beat them both very unsurprising that he was Tom Brady's LFG player of the game.
Who else? Jayden Daniels, what a performance, almost 300 yards passing. To go on the road against the number 1 ranked team in your conference, how are you able to rise up today and make every great decision in every big moment, whether it was a zone read, a pass? How did that come about today for you, Jayden?
I mean, first, I want to ask you what LFG stands for.
It's inappropriate. It's a family-friendly program, but it's
man, it's just the preparation. Cliff and me, we talk countless hours of everything, how we want to attack the defense, and I see what I see. I trust my eyes, and I prepare for these moments like this.
So tell me, and I know you and Cliff have such a great relationship, who's really enabled you to be so calm, so confident in your rookie year?
Yeah, I think it's the whole offensive staff. They do a great job of putting what they know I can handle on my plate, which I feel like is a lot. They feel like that too. I just prepare. I prepare the right way. I don't cheat the game. You got to put in the work to get the product out on Sundays. So, I just thank my coaching staff, really.
Yeah, and I'm sure they love calling plays for you and seeing you lead the team. I've heard about your work ethic. That's one of your weapons. But to me, what do you see as your bigger weapon, your legs or your arm?
Man, I think it's the best of both worlds. There's guys in the league that can make plays with the both, and I consider myself one of them.
Yeah, you've done it all season long. This was an unbelievable performance by you and your team. Complimentary football at its best. Congratulations. We'll see you next week.
Every game that I broadcast, I award the LFG Player of the Game to that one player who makes me say, let's go.
I could probably spend the rest of the segment just reading off fun Jayden Daniels stats that we found, and we did find a lot of them. For instance, Jayden Daniels has become the first rookie quarterback in history to throw multiple touchdown passes in multiple playoff games. How about the fact that Jayden Daniels was 7 of 9 for 109 yards when pressured by the Lions on Saturday night? Jared Goff, 4 of 14 for 65 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. I could keep doing that. And to be clear, Jayden Daniels, he's been one of the stories of the season all year. He was the shoe-in for Offensive Rookie of the Year for most of the season. Now he becomes not just a rookie storyline, but one of the definitive stories, one of the definitive memories of this 2024 NFL season. I said at some point in December that heading into the playoffs, and obviously a lot can and has changed, but for so much of the regular season, the Detroit Lions felt like the team of the year, this team of destiny that had taken a step forward at every turn under Dan Campbell and was poised to reach the Super Bowl for the first time in franchise history. Not on his own, but so much due to him, Jayden Daniels has derailed all of that and lifted up an equally downtrodden franchise. The Commanders had the longest conference title game drought in the NFC, 33 years, not since 1991. He has them a game away from the Super Bowl. I turned 36 at the tail end of the regular season. I was alive when the Commanders last won the Super Bowl in 1991. I don't remember it. I have no real memories of the football team located in Washington being a real threat to reach the Super Bowl, let alone win it. Jayden Daniels changed that on Saturday night. It is one of the coolest things about this 2024 season. It's one of the cooler stories in sports in recent memory, in my opinion. Having said all of that, having made sure to give Jayden Daniels his due, I do want to highlight so much else about this Commanders team that is insanely cool to watch and to think about. Because think about all the other pieces that had to come into place for this to happen. I mean, for starters, Josh Harris and his ownership group have to buy the Commanders. They have to get their first head coaching hire right, which they do by hiring Dan Quinn, who didn't seem likely to win Coach of the Year back in, I don't know, late November, early December, when it kind of felt like Washington was on a little bit of a downturn. Curious to see how that's aged, because goodness gracious, few people have done a better job than him. On top of that, Dan Quinn had to nail his hires. Offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury coached a phenomenal game, outcoached Ben Johnson, who will very likely be hired as an NFL head coach here in the coming weeks, especially now that he can talk to other teams with the Lions out of the playoffs. Cliff Kingsbury. They nail the number 2 overall pick in the draft in Jayden Daniels, who becomes offensive rookie of the year. And so many other decisions. This is just a baseline of research, but think about the stuff that happened in this game. Jeremy Chin, veteran safety, free agency ad by Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, first-year GM, by the way, another hire that the Commanders had to nail. Jeremy Chin, free agency ad, 12 tackles and the game-ending interception. Frankie Louvu, one of the most underrated hybrid players in the NFL, free agency ad, 9 tackles and a crucial fumble recovery. Dorrance Armstrong, who followed Dan Quinn from Dallas to Washington, 3 tackles, 2 sacks. Austin Eckler, the washed-up running back. People chuckled at Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz joining this team in the twilight years of their career. Eckler, 88 scrimmage yards. Zach Ertz, 5 catches, 28 yards, a touchdown, and a 4th down conversion. Bobby Wagner, Quinn's buddy from way back in the Legion of Boom days in Seattle. Free agency ad, 8 tackles. Mikey Sainristil getting no shine whatsoever because he's the second best rookie on his team. But he's pretty damn good in his own right. The 3rd round pick, the cornerback out of Michigan, 2 PBUs, 2 interceptions in this game. Yes, Jayden Daniels is the catalyst for all of it, but so many small decisions that the Commanders have made going back to January and February of last year have paid dividends. Throughout the season, yes, but at Ford Field on Saturday night, it was all a crucial component of, again, not just eking by the the Lions, but being the much better team in the process. Phenomenal story, regardless of who they play. I can't wait to see how they follow it up. I said it last week. I don't think they're going to blink because their quarterback never does. I guarantee you, even if it's the Eagles, people will be taking them a lot more seriously in this upcoming matchup than they did heading into Detroit. On the flip side of this, I always want to make sure we give the winning team the proper amount of attention and the proper amount of praise for getting the dub. But it is particularly heartbreaking. Probably not if you're an NFC North rival fan, but I do mean that. I think the Detroit Lions were one of the dominant narratives of this entire season. Dan Campbell takes over in 21, leads them from 3-13-1 to missing the playoffs by a night in 2022 to reaching the NFC title game in 2023. And with 7 minutes to go, and you know it's more than likely over. I mean, we had a long time to process this heartbreak for the Lions on Saturday night. It's hard not to think about Dan Campbell in the wake of that loss to San Francisco in the NFC title game last year, simply saying, I don't know if we'll be back here. It's hard to get here. You need a lot of things to go right. And this is exactly what he was talking about, because not to make excuses for them, but you watch Washington carve through that defense. You watch through a lot of teams carve through Detroit's defense over the last 6 or so weeks. It's hard not to think about the starts and potential Pro Bowls lost to injured reserve. Aiden Hutchinson did not wind up playing a role again for this team after getting hurt in week 6. Aleem McNeil goes down in December. Carlton Davis, starting cornerback, misses a lot of the year. Half of the Lions secondary missed a solid chunk of the year. Malcolm Rodriguez. They got Alex Anzalone back for the playoffs, but missed a significant chunk of the year. All of that stuff has to go right for you to improve on losing in the NFC Championship. And they had their moments here, to be sure. I mean, the Lions moved the ball equally as well as the Commanders. Jahmyr Gibbs averaged 8 yards a carry. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a phenomenal day. I feel like people in Detroit are probably going to take note of the fact that the Lions only ran the ball 23 times in this game, and Jahmyr Gibbs only got 14 carries, and they still ran for 200 yards on the day. Probably point out that maybe the Lions outthought themselves here. Maybe they should have stuck to the ground game a little more reliably, looked for a little bit more balance before the score got out of whack. I digress. The point is, even when you're 15-2 plus 222 in point differential, getting to the conference championship game is incredibly difficult. And it feels like a heartbreaking missed opportunity. I will say, I saw people afterward saying this could be the end for this team. I don't necessarily buy that. I think the Lions are poised to bring the vast majority of this team back. They're only key free agents, I think, really key free agents. Right guard Kevin Zeitler, two of their top cornerbacks, Carlton Davis and Emmanuel Mosley. There's work to be done, but the core of this roster is poised to do this again and probably again after that. But now the problem becomes potential brain drain. Can you count on replicating this without Ben Johnson and or Aaron Glenn? Does one of those guys stay? Do they both surprise everyone and hold off on taking head coaching jobs for another year? That's kind of hard to imagine. And how will those hires go if you have to replace those guys? I mean, we saw the Philadelphia Eagles returned a very similar team in 2023 that reached the Super Bowl in 22, but the coaching hires weren't right. The chemistry wasn't the same, and they didn't ultimately come close. The Lions should be good for the foreseeable future, but you just can't count on trips to the NFC Championship game on a regular basis. That's what makes what Kansas City is doing in the AFC so remarkable. We will get to that, but as exciting as a night as this was for the Washington Commanders, and it definitely is, it's a sobering reminder that even in a storybook season in its own right for Detroit, where so much went right and so much was fun and exciting, you can still wind up going one and done in the playoffs. And, the Lions have been used to the pain of irrelevance for a long, long time. And I'm sure they would take the pain of missed opportunity over the pain of irrelevance, but it is a different kind of sting altogether. I'm sure that's going to be tough to move past in Detroit. What a game. Okay. Yeah. I had to dump all of my thoughts on that out there. I think we handled that.